just for a day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of our Speak podcast. Thanks for tuning back in. We hope you got to listen to episode 1 about friendships. If not, it's still on our page. You guys can scroll down and listen to it. We had a really good first conversation, right?
Yes. Hello, everyone.
So today, we're going to dive into episode 2. Today, we're going to be talking about gender stereotypes. So I'm really excited about this topic because I feel like within the past year or so, this has become something that I personally have become more aware of and more passionate about. So I'm really excited for us to dive into this.
Yes. So, emotions. How do we feel about our emotions and being able to express those emotions? Is that very important for us?
And how does that look for women compared to men? So it's the first kind of subtopic we're going to dive into is this idea of emotions. So one thing that I notice is I feel like as women, we're often known for being more in touch with or in tune with our own emotions and being expressive with those emotions. So I feel like that's definitely a positive that we have as women. But sometimes I feel like it can be flipped into a negative where sometimes things are said like, oh, y'all women have so many emotions and you just don't think with your head. You get too into your feelings, right?
Yes. And you know what? I'm sitting here thinking as a woman, okay, when we deal with our emotions, right? It's something that we're encountering mentally. So it's not really something that others can see, but we know that we're dealing with that inside.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, okay, the only thing we know how to do is to be expressive.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have all of those emotions going on inside and you can't talk it out to anyone, what do you do? And how are you supposed to show that?
Mm-hmm. And I feel like as women, we're almost given like more of a ticket to be expressive with those emotions. Like from the time we're young, we are really shown and affirmed in our expression of those emotions. Like when we're feeling sad or angry, like a lot of people are more accepting of our expression of those emotions. And I feel like as women, we're also more comfortable expressing those emotions and communicating about how we're feeling. But why is that? Why is it that as women, we are more comfortable with expressing our emotions than men might be?
You know what, Taylor? I really can't answer that, but I do feel like you do have women that are like men. It is hard for them to express themselves, or if I do express myself, there's something wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Versus a man, like the song said, "If I were a boy." Ooh, I have to work on that.
No, I like what you said when we were talking about this before. So I like what you said before when we were kind of talking about this topic. You said how when we express our emotions, that shouldn't be correlated to weakness.
Yes, absolutely. I don't feel like it should be correlated to weakness because you're expressing yourself. If you're sad, you're expressing that. If you're angry, you're expressing that. If you're happy, you're expressing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that it starts at a young age. When you're teaching emotions to students, when you're demonstrating, you're not always showing them a happy face.
Right.
You show them how a sad face looks. You show them how an angry face looks. And all of those are a part of emotions.
Right. Well, and I think too, like I was just thinking back, we have 2 fantastic guidance counselors at our school. They're amazing. And recently they were doing a lesson with us about emotions with the kids. And I remember one of our guidance counselors was doing a lesson with the kids, and they were talking about different colors. Like if you're feeling blue, this is what it might look like. And one thing that really struck me is when she was going around the room at a young age. I teach first grade, and Jonte teaches 4K, so she teaches the itty itty bitties. Is a lot of the boys and the girls in the class were willing to say, I'm feeling blue. And a lot of them said, well, it's rainy outside and we don't get to go to recess. And I remember being struck by the fact that the young boys in my class, especially, were so willing to openly say that they were feeling blue. So then I started to think about, like, okay, men, right? Men are so reluctant to express emotion. Like we said before, it's been like misconstrued with like weakness, right? If you're expressive in your emotions, then you're weak, or you're acting like a girl, or you're crying like a girl. Like all of these phrases that have become so offensive about emotions and comparing them to being women. And I started thinking about, like, at what age are these little boys going to be shoved into this box of quote unquote masculinity and no longer feel safe expressing that they're feeling blue?
There we go. That was going to be my question. When does it shift?
Mm-hmm.
When? Is it at the stage where they're realizing that society is saying, "Oh no, that's not what you should be doing"?
Mm-hmm. I think so. And I think so this is kind of what I'm thinking with gender stereotypes is I feel like there's this social construct of masculinity and femininity. And this is what as a woman you should look like, sound like, feel like. And as a man, this is what society says we should look like, sound like, feel like, right? And you have to, society is just so strict about stay inside of your box, right? Be masculine enough if you're a man. Be feminine enough if you're a female. And I feel like it's so, what really is, what does it mean to be female? What does it mean to be male outside of biology? You know what I mean? I feel like it's just becomes like, you get what I'm saying? Like these roles of what women are supposed to be and men are supposed to be have become so strict, and why?
And see, this is my thing, Taylor. Okay, sad sad can be a title for a man, and sad can be a title for a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Sad can be a title for a boy and a girl. It doesn't matter. The same thing for anger and the same thing for happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Happiness is just not for a woman, right? And happiness is just not for a man. So why are we assigned
a responsibility or what we're allowed to do? So
exactly.
I feel like that's where this social construct of gender roles is so toxic. And as it relates to emotions, I feel like we're really hurting our men and we're really hurting our boys. And Jonte is a mama to a little boy, and so I know it feels different to you as a woman raising a boy and thinking about, what is going to be expected of him. Like we think about the term man up. What does that even mean? Toughen up? You know what I mean? Girls are tough too. Boys are tough too. Why do we tell little boys to man up when they're expressive of emotion or sadness or pain?
Exactly. Okay, I'm going back to this again. Okay, tough. It's just not a word that belongs to a man's description.
Right.
A woman can be tough.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right. Exactly. So
and there's a balance in all of this. There is a balance. When we analyze and we evaluate everything and all of these descriptions, there is a balance.
And I feel like there's so many just like expectations of men and women that even as a woman, like we find ourselves following. Like I'm going to pick on Jonte for a second. Earlier she was like, oh, that wasn't ladylike. And I kind of jumped at her. I was like, hey, we're about to have our podcast about gender stereotypes. You just said ladylike. Well, what does it mean to be ladylike? And think about that. Our little girls, oh, don't sit crisscross wearing a dress that's not ladylike. Instead of saying, hey, make sure you're not flashing your underwear to other people. That's the reason you shouldn't sit crisscross in a dress. We tell girls it's not ladylike.
You're right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're right.
So that's where I feel like this whole idea of gender roles and gender stereotypes is ingrained in kids from such a small age. Like I've heard people say to young children, oh, it's not ladylike to burp or to belch or to sit crisscross in a dress. It's not ladylike to chew with your mouth open. Like, what?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're right. And what about? I think for me, it's the roles of women versus men.
Mm-hmm. So let's take that a step further, right? So thinking about relationships and even marriage, right? Which I am not in a relationship and I'm not married. However, Jonte is. But I also am keenly aware of what society will often say is a woman's role in a relationship and in marriage, and what a man's role is in a relationship and in marriage, and almost even to a T, like duties that are assigned to men and women. Like, it is the woman's job to cook dinner. It is the man's job to mow the lawn. Well, what if I'm a woman and I hate to cook? Or what if I'm a woman and I really like mowing that daggum grass?
You're right.
Why is that a problem?
Now, if you're a woman who does not like to cook, you probably won't have a husband.
See, but that's what I'm saying. That's a gender stereotype. But why is that the case? Why isn't it, hey men, if you don't know how to cook, you're not going to find a wife because you don't know how to cook? Why is that put on us as women?
You're right.
You get what I'm saying?
I got you.
But as women, we're always told that, oh, you better learn how to cook so you can feed your man. What? My man can feed himself. If not, you better like Easy Mac. But you get what I'm saying,
I got
though.
you,
It's like, but why don't we tell men the same? Why don't we tell men, you better learn how to cook so you can cook a nice dinner for your wife?
But, okay, hear me out on this. Okay, so remember how you told us that your little boys in your class, they were able to express themselves, right? Okay, that's only because that's what they had been taught, right? And we're gonna assume they were taught that by their parents. Okay. Now, remember we said we want to know where it shifted, right? We want to say where and when. Okay. So now when we talk relationship and marriage or just living together, it's back to that teaching stage again. Okay, Mario, I understand I'm the woman of the house, and I understand that, you know, in your mind I'm supposed to cook dinner, but hey, you could help me cook dinner sometimes too. See, now we're back to the teaching stage, because you could be in a relationship or a marriage or living with someone who, you know, you're gonna have to teach them, because I always say, Taylor, if you don't know, then you don't know, and that's okay. Now, when you do know, that's something different.
But my question is, and we're just picking on Mario and using him as an example because he's Jonte's husband, but why is it that we're using him as an example, or other men were taught from the beginning that it is the woman's job? To me, that is what's problematic. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
For you to have the conversation and say, yes, I like as a person, I love to cook and bake. Like, I love it.
Miss Betty Crocker.
And I do a pretty good job of it.
Okay, now.
So I don't have a problem doing that. But what I would have a problem with is if somebody told me it was my job just because I'm a woman. Oh, you have to cook for your husband, keep him happy, feed him hot meals because you're a woman. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
To me, it should be like, oh, hey, I really like to cook, but you don't. So that's the reason why more often than not, I assume the role. Not because I'm the woman and you're the man, and as the woman, for some reason, we've decided that women have to cook.
But Taylor, okay, this is the thing about it. So it's not like it's a man saying all of this. Women are saying the exact same thing. Like, my grandma would tell me all the time, did you cook anything today, Jonte? I would say no. She was like, you ain't gonna have a husband.
But isn't that a testament to how deeply rooted these gender roles are beaten into all of our heads?
Okay.
That even as women, sometimes we make remarks that are offensive to women because misogyny sometimes can be so deeply rooted that we as women will make misogynistic comments. Like, I'll never forget it, and I'm not going to even give context to the situation. But recently I was told about a situation where a woman who was a working woman was talking about her job and how she has her kids, blah, blah, blah. And another woman said to her, well, when do you find time to do the laundry? I gasped. I wanted to crawl under a rock and die. Like, a woman said that to another woman. What if her husband's the one? What if it's his turn to do the laundry that week? But as a woman, you made the assumption, oh, you're the woman. It's your job. You're neglecting your family by working because you should be doing the laundry. And a woman said that. So I agree with you. I feel like sometimes as women, we can be our own worst enemy, and we can make misogynistic comments, because misogyny can be so deeply rooted in
Oh,
society that we begin to adopt that mentality even though it's harmful to us as women.
But Taylor, okay, do you think like we're slowly drifting out of the stereotypes though of men and women roles?
I think we're getting better. I think we're getting a little bit better.
I think so too.
But I don't know, yes and no. I feel like it depends on the situation, it depends on the person. And I
Yeah,
think
that's
what
true.
it is like, as a society, I feel like we're evolving, and I have a lot of faith in like the youth of our country.
Okay.
Right? Like all of these big movements, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, a lot of those are led up by or involved with younger people, right?
Okay, okay. Oh, wrong button, y'all. Oh.
This is the raw, uncut version. We're not even gonna edit that out. but I feel like the youth is like you said, your grandma. She was really, really raised where that was the way. That
Yeah.
was the woman's job, and I feel like we're getting a little bit better. But I feel like the problem is that individuals are not evolving their own mentality. For example, older generations, they still think that way.
Yes, I agree.
You know what I'm saying? Like our grandparents, our great grandparents, they still have that mentality, right? Where it's like tattoos are bad and it's not ladylike and man up and you better cook your husband a meal or you're not going to get married. Like that is a generational thing. So that's where I'm saying I do see some hope, and then I feel like these younger generations are examining these gender roles a little bit more and questioning them in a way that's positive. But I feel like a lot of older generations can be kind of stuck in their ways where they're like, no, this is how things are.
Oh yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And you think about too, like working women, right? Working women was not as much of a thing, I'm using my air quotes, y'all can't see me, as much of a thing with older generations as it is now.
Yep.
You know, like being a stay-at-home mom was more of the thing, you know, or caring for the home was a woman's role. But now, ladies are bossing up.
It's 2021. Come on now. Get with it or get lost.
So I feel like now it's like women are saying, well, I work too and you work, so why is it my job to come home and do the laundry and clean the house and cook the meals because I'm working too?
Listen, I always tell Mario, dream work makes the team work.
Vice versa.
Oh.
Dream work.
Oh.
Teamwork.
The A is for authentic. So I gotta say about that.
Yes, teamwork does make the dream work.
Okay now.
But that's what I'm saying. Where that's what relationships should be.
Yep.
Is, hey, you work late tonight? I got dinner. I got dinner covered.
Yep.
And if I don't like to cook, I'll pick up a pizza. Or
Yep.
if I'm a terrible cook, I'll pick up a pizza.
Yep.
But not just because you're the woman, you better have hot dinner on the table, lady.
Exactly.
Just because you're the woman. That's just not how it should be.
Now, okay, I'm gonna be honest. Now, when it comes to certain roles for men, like mowing the lawn and like changing the tire, like I'm bad with that because I do feel like a man is expected to do that.
Like
I'm being a
you would make
hypocrite.
Mario do that?
Yeah. How do you feel about that? So I can't really,
So, okay, so I feel like this goes back to societal things, right? Like, as women, from a young age, we're taught to be nurturing. Like, we're given baby dolls as toys. Think about that for a second. Jonte's like, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
But think about that. As women, we are given baby dolls as toys. Like, you need to learn how to be nurturing. Gentle with the baby, rock the baby, feed the baby, right? Or housekeeping sets.
Yeah.
A little kitchen. Heck, I had a little kitchen. Right?
Me too.
Okay, but this is where I'm like, wow, I feel like I've gotten really woke with this in the
Yeah.
past year or so, where you start to realize those things. The toys that we play with from a time we're young as women are all about keeping the home, caring for babies. Jonte's mouth is hanging open. I just blew her mind.
Listen.
dressing the Barbie
Yeah.
dolls, rock the baby,
Yeah.
bring me a hot cooked meal, right?
Yeah.
What are little boys given? Building toys, Legos, blocks, trucks,
You're right, Taylor.
tracks.
Yep.
I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
Balls, right?
Yep.
So from the time we're young, as little girls, we are conditioned to do these things.
You're right.
And as boys, they are conditioned to do these things. They're not conditioned to be nurturing or to cook a meal in their little fake kitchen or given Barbie dolls to dress up, right?
You're right.
So it starts at a young age, and then you think about like classes in high school. Like, for example, there was a child development class in high school. Did you see a lot of boys in that class? Or a home ec sewing class? Did you see a lot of boys in that class? Probably not. They were probably in weight training or engineering. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like these pathways are created for boys and girls in the beginning, and we kind of move down those pathways. So it's not necessarily that you're like, oh, I'm hopeless, I can't do this, Mario needs to do it for me. You've never been taught, or you've never learned, you know?
Right.
Like, for example, I learned how to change a tire. I can change my own tire now. It's great. I don't need somebody else. But I had to learn and be taught. And boys are always taught to do those things. It's just natural.
It is natural, yeah.
But as girls, we are not intentionally taught to do those things in the same way that boys don't have easy bake ovens.
You're right.
They're not taught to cook and bake. They don't stand in the kitchen with mama and learn how to cook like we do.
Yeah.
So I feel like it needs to trickle down and start younger. Like, girls, and I feel like that's what I'm saying. It's getting a little bit better. Like, I see little boys playing with the kitchens, and I'll see little girls playing with the Legos and the cars, and it's fantastic.
Yeah. But the question, again, when and where does it change from that?
Right. And I don't know the answer to that, of what that breaking point is. But I do know that as kids, you rely a lot on your environment.
You do.
So that depends on like the exposure that you're given as a child to different experiences, to different types of toys, to learning experiences. Like, you know, I remember my dad taking me out and showing me how to light the grill. Just things like that. Which, I mean, my dad's a father of 2 girls. So those were the types of things that he was excited to show me because he didn't have a son.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Right.
And I played softball, so I got to throw the ball with dad in the yard, which are not typically things that girls would quote-unquote do.
Exactly.
Because, you know, girls do one thing and boys do another thing.
Wow.
Right? Isn't it so interesting?
I've never thought about it like that.
Exactly. But that's what
made a
I'm
great
saying.
point.
I think it goes so deep into society
It
that it's
does.
almost like
You see it and you don't see
exactly.
it. Yep.
I would definitely consider myself okay, and like let's get into this term feminist, right?
Okay.
I would absolutely consider myself a feminist. Every time that Flawless comes on by Beyonce, Jonte can attest, I do that entire verse
Yep.
and talk about women, you know?
Yep.
We're taught to shrink ourselves, you know? So I would definitely consider myself a feminist, but I feel like the word feminist has been given such ugly labels. Oh, like feminists are these quote-unquote nasty women, which they have been referred to as nasty women who refuse to shave their legs and they don't wear bras and they're just these nasty women. Right? Like, why is that what a feminist... You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why is that the poster child of feminism?
Yep.
You know what? And there should be feminist men, too.
Yep.
Like, if you're a dad of girls, you should be a feminist, right? Because feminism is wanting equality for women to have the same opportunity, the same rights as men. So why is this label given to feminism where it's like people like cringe when you say you're a feminist? Oh, so you don't wear a bra, you don't shave your legs. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's just this dramatic idea of feminism when it's like, no, we should all be feminists. We should all everybody knows a girl that they love,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
We all love girls. We all have moms.
Yep.
We all have sisters or cousins or aunties, and we should all be feminists.
Yes. And how I feel, just stand up, at the end of the day, stand up for what is right.
And I feel like that's where it gets hard. That is where, Oh, so, okay. So you're
Uh-huh.
asking about like where does it start? And again, I don't have a perfect answer for
Mhm.
that. But you think about this idea of peer pressure
You're right.
and standing up for what's right. So when a little boy's getting picked on by another little boy saying, "Oh, Billy's crying like a little girl," which one of those kids is gonna say, "What's wrong with crying? That has nothing to do with girls."
See, I want Cam to be that child.
Right, exactly.
Yes.
But that's what we have to raise our boys to be prepared for, to stand up and believe. It's okay to cry. Crying does not belong to girls. Crying does not make you a girl.
Exactly.
Toughness does not belong to men. Women and girls are tough too.
Yes.
Some might argue are tougher.
and you have to realize too. We go through emotions whenever we go through experiences, right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone experience is not going to be the same when it comes to dealing with their emotions, because I could be dealing with something and it could make me angry, but when you're dealing with it, it could make you either sad or happy.
Mm-hmm.
So like you said, like why it shouldn't be assigned is
Mhm.
what I'm trying to say. Why is it being assigned?
Mm-hmm. But okay, back to what you're saying. As women, we can be guilty of shaming men for expressing emotions.
Mhm.
Why are you acting like a little girl? How many times have you heard a woman kind of say that to a man?
Mhm.
Or smack him and tell him to man up,
Mhm.
right? But then, as women, I might argue one of my biggest hurdles with men is they're not, this is a sweeping generalization, but a lot of men are not expressive.
Okay.
They don't show emotion. And you're like, do you feel anything?
Okay, now I have a question. You know, we keep it real on Speak.
Mm-hmm.
So is it just a black man thing, or is it a white man thing, or is it just a man thing in general?
Okay, so
Talk
I
to
think this is another layer
Mm.
of gender roles involving race, right?
Say that.
So there, say more. So there, I feel like there's within different cultures and
Mhm.
within different races,
Uh-huh.
there are different gender roles. So, for example, in some countries, women still can't drive.
Say what?
Right. Women can't drive. In some countries, women don't go to school. You know what I mean? Women are in arranged marriages. Like, as a parent, you're considered a failure if you can't marry off your daughter. Think about that for a second. My poor parents might be screwed because I don't know if I'm ever going to get married.
But see, okay, but that leads back to standing up for what is right.
But okay, but this is my thing though. What I'm saying is when misogyny is so deeply rooted in an entire culture, especially like I'm Asian, and Asian cultures, there is a big problem with misogyny. Right? Like think about those arranged marriages and women not being able to go to school and having the right to drive. Like women are dependent on men because they are stripped of those rights. Right? So I feel like culturally, how do you fix an entire culture?
You're right.
And then it's tough too because you think about like culture is an important part of who we are, right? But how do we stay true and loyal to a culture that oppresses us as women?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because some societies, like if you're put in arranged marriages, how do you, like, you're like, yes, I'm so invested in my culture, but then you say like, okay, well also part of my culture is oppressing women.
Yeah.
So that's a tough balance, right?
Yes.
Like culture is an important part of who we are, but what happens when culture oppresses you directly?
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's a whole nother layer to it.
So, okay, in all of this, right? Where is the happiness? No, I'm
John Tate said, "I'm
serious.
sad now."
Because,
I'm sad.
because where is the happiness in all of this? Like when we talk about gender roles, right? And a man having to do certain things and a woman have to do certain things, right? Okay. Where is the happiness with the equality?
I think it's
You see what I'm saying?
I think it's refusing to accept these rules. You know what I'm saying?
Break it down.
Like as a woman, I think the happiness and the freedom is in saying, no, I'm not going to live my life by these roles. These rules that were so asinine and created for whatever reason. So I think that's part of it. You know what I mean? Like, and take it a step further, jobs. think about how there are such small percentages of women in the medical field, in fields of engineering, in, very high up corporate positions. The percentage of women is so incredibly small, but we cover 50% of the population, roughly. So how is that the case? How is it the case that there's such little representation for women when we are the same amount as men? You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that's another step too, where I mean, I don't mean to make this political, but I was really, really excited when Joe Biden said, I'm going to choose a female running mate. He said, my promise is if you select me, I am going to put a woman in the White House. That's what he wanted to do. And I felt like that was huge. You know what I mean? Shantae's struggling with her soundboard. I know she was looking for that applause.
Oh, can you clap for the people, Taylor? Thank you, Taylor. Thank you.
But you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like there's such little representation with women here or there. And I feel like, I hate to say it, but men have to make the choice sometimes to help bridge that gap. You know what I mean?
Yes, and I just, sometimes it's just time for a change. There's nothing wrong with change.
Right?
Change is good for the soul. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and I feel like, too, even going through that pandemic, like, come on now, that was a wake-up call for society.
I think we have to choose with... So, we talk about change as such, like a movement. You know what I mean? A lot of times when you're like, there needs to be change. It's like, you think about it so large scale. But I think that changes start with you.
Okay, say
right?
that. Yeah.
So if you, like, for example, me as a person, I just, like you said, I accepted things like it's not ladylike and man up. And then I read this book, guys. It changed my life. I gave it to Jonte. It's called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. I strongly believe that everyone should read this book. Everyone should read this book. It is like a feminist anthem, and some of you just shuddered away and are like, no, I'm not going to read that. But it talks so much kind of about all of these things. Like, one of my favorite chapters that she talks about, I was laughing so hard I had to close the book. And I'm sorry to spoil it for you, because you probably haven't gotten there yet. But so Glennon talks about how her husband, Craig, has a new girlfriend. And for context, her husband cheated on her, so that was a sore spot. And for Thanksgiving, they decided they were going to do this turkey trot marathon. Where they were going to run this race for Thanksgiving. So their entire family did it. All their kids. She ran it. Her ex-husband ran it, and his girlfriend ran it. And now Glennon Doyle is married to Abby Wambach, another woman now. And so she wrote about how she's never been a runner, but she is fiercely competitive. And so her plan of attack going into this turkey trot was just to walk. She was just going to stay back with some of the kids. She's going to walk and keep a healthy pace. Well, then she saw that her ex-husband's girlfriend was starting to run. And she talks about how she felt this, like, burning desire to beat her. Like, she had to beat this woman. Like, and that little verse in Flawless talks about that, about how we always see each other as competition. And so she talks about how she raced her, and I forget if she beat her or she didn't, but, like, she was so sore and so exhausted, and her wife, Abby, was like, Glennon, you said you were going to walk. Why'd you start running?
But you see?
So I think as women, we do see each other as competition, and not in a good way, in a toxic way. Right? And that little verse in Flawless talks about, we see each other as competition, not for jobs or education, but for the attention of men.
Oh, say that.
Right?
Say that again.
Exactly. Not for jobs, not for education, but for the attention of men. And in that scenario, she said that deliberately. She was like, why? Why did I feel the need to one-up this woman while she's dating my husband? And then in another chapter, she talks about how she was at her kid's soccer game. This one was hysterical too. And there was a girl on the opposing team of her daughter's team, on the soccer team, and she was really good. She was just a natural athlete, and she scored all these goals, and she was so great. And Glennon said, I automatically hated her. Like, I hated this little girl. She was cocky, she was arrogant, and then she said, she was like, why am I villainizing this little girl for everything that we should all aspire to be?
Okay, now, this is my thing right here. Okay, confidence. Like, do women envy other women because of their confidence level?
I think so. I think so. And she mentioned that, and she called herself out. She was like, I was so just like in disgust of this girl, and I called her nasty words like cocky and arrogant, when really she was talented and confident.
Okay.
And she was like, that is what I should want for my daughter. That's what I should want for myself. And instead, I was sitting there hating a little girl because
you know what?
of who she was.
Taylor, I always say, confidence is something that no one can take away from you. Why, Jonte? Because that's something that's instilled inside of you.
Yep.
It's such a beautiful thing because it's something that you feel but others see. Y'all didn't hear me. Let me say that again. It's something that you feel but others see.
But I think as women too, since we're talking about gender roles, gender stereotypes, whatever, we are taught to see that as a threat. You know what I mean? When another woman is confident, when she's leveling up, when she's growing, we see that as a threat to ourselves, right? We feel the need to compete with that, or we're threatened by that, or we're not genuinely happy for other women because we're in competition with them. But why?
Or maybe because we feel insecure. But this is the funny thing, Taylor. Okay. While I'm wasting my time and energy wondering how I can compete with you, little do I know I could be much better.
Right.
At the same thing.
But, okay, so this is where, like, my super critical lens with feminism comes into play. Is that another social construct where, as girls, we're taught to see each other as competition to distract ourselves from growing? You know what I mean? It's like, okay, if we can teach these girls or instill in these girls that they need to compete with each other, then they're distracted.
Okay, I gotta think hard about that one. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. By me being the only girl and raised with two brothers, I can't remember my mom telling me that I have to be this certain person because one day I would have to compete against another woman. I just remember her telling me and my dad, just being the best that you can be and be yourself. In a world where you can be anything, be yourself. Now, I can't speak for any other woman because there probably are girls whose mothers are teaching them, okay, you have to be better than the next person.
Right.
But see, in your mind...
So, okay, here's my thought, where I don't know that we're necessarily deliberately teaching girls this.
Okay.
But, okay, for example, as women, we really look to our mothers.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
We idolize our moms. They're who we want to be. They're who we believe in, right? They're our foundation. And so I feel like sometimes as women, especially mothers of daughters, we have to be so aware of ourselves and what we're indirectly teaching our daughters.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So, for example, if you're teaching your daughter, oh, you're beautiful no matter what.
Yeah.
You know, as long as you're healthy, everything's fine. But then you obsess over food labels or you obsess over working out. Your daughters aren't listening to what you're saying to them. They're watching what you're doing.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
That's true.
Or if, you know, you're telling her, oh, be you, be yourself. But then as a mom or as women, we are trying to, like, find a prettier dress or look nicer than this woman, or you know what I mean? Those are the things that I feel like we see our moms do. And I was very fortunate. Like, my mom was never that way. I was raised in a house where I was raised very strong and level-headed. I remember one of the lessons my mom and my dad taught me growing up is people are not going to like you. My mom said that. I will never go to a parent for you and say, why doesn't so-and-so want to be friends with Taylor? Because Taylor, nobody got to be friends with you. It is nobody's job to be your friend.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And so I was taught that from the time I was young. People are not going to like you. People are going to be jealous of you. People may say mean things about you. You don't need to let that bother you. It's going to happen. And I remember one of my dad's like go-to saying is, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when.
Yep.
And they told us that from when we were young, like, this is going to happen. And I was prepared for it.
Can I ask you a question? Being that you do have a sister, did you ever felt the need to compete, or was there ever competition between y'all?
So my sister and I are juicy.
Right?
So my sister and I are, in some ways, and we were just talking about this, my sister and I in some ways are so similar, but in other ways we're so incredibly different. So I think in some ways we pursued such different things that I didn't really ever feel in direct competition with my sister.
That's good.
Like, I was a sports girl. I love football. I love watching sports. I was just talking to some friends about how I used to wrestle the next door neighbor boys in the front yard. I would play dodgeball. Like, in high school, I wasn't allowed, like, they had a girls dodgeball and boys dodgeball, and my coach was like, you can't play with the girls, you have to play with the boys, you're gonna hurt somebody.
Wow.
And so I really found myself in athletics and team sports. And then my sister is brilliant. She's so incredibly smart. And so she was really talented in theater arts. That's what she went to Rawlings for. And she played the piano.
Okay.
And she tutored. And so we kind of did different things growing up.
Okay. Shout out to Lindsay.
Yep, shout out to Lindsay. And so I feel like in a lot of ways we weren't ever directly in competition with her, because it wasn't like she played softball and I played softball and we were on the same team and I played and she didn't play, or, you know, she did better at the piano recital than I did, because we had our different things. But however, I will say, like I said, my sister is incredibly brilliant and I would consider myself pretty intelligent. I'm a pretty smart person. However, being the younger, I always had to follow her in school. So teachers knew Lindsay. They knew she was so incredibly smart. And I held my own in the classroom. I was, for the most part, a straight A, occasional B student, 1 C in my entire life. I cried. And so that was a little bit of a challenge for me growing up. Is like, I think about, I was in AP government, and that was my sister's thing. She was so good at social studies. And my teacher was the nicest guy. I loved him. He was such a great teacher. But I feel like in the first few weeks of school, he was like, oh, Taylor's really not her sister. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, Taylor's the one coming in during her lunch to retake this quiz that she failed.
Right.
But I mean, I was there and I got my good grade or whatever. But once my teachers kind of realized, oh, they're completely different, they were able to respect me on that level as a separate entity from my sister. But that was kind of hard. Yep. Like, there was always this shadow hanging over me where it was like, Lindsay was brilliant, you know? And sometimes I feel like you see younger kids stray from that. You know? They're just like, I'll never be that, so I'm going to go the opposite direction. There's
like
kind of
my
off topic,
siblings.
but yeah.
Yeah. Like my brothers, they were like that. Now, of course, now it's different because we're much older. So now, you know, we all want better for ourselves, so it's a little different. But I didn't really have the issue with the competition between another female because it was always me. Like, I was the one who had to lead myself. So, which I'm grateful for that, because I just enjoy teaching myself new things. And I think that's another reason why I became a teacher, because I enjoy teaching.
You're learning with them, truly.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm learning for myself as well. So I never really saw women as competition, because I feel like every woman is different, and I feel like you have to know it for yourself, though. So once you know it for yourself, then everything else will fall into place.
Okay. So, I mean, we're at like 45 minutes right now. We're running on pretty good time. So thinking about, all right, we've kind of addressed some of these different issues that Jonte and I have noticed about gender stereotypes and gender roles, and how a lot of times they can be problematic to both men and women, right? They can be harmful to both of us. So thinking about, like, what are our next steps? What can we do as individuals to to try to combat some of the issues that we're seeing as they relate to gender roles, gender stereotypes?
If I may speak for myself, I feel like I need to be the change.
Mm-hmm.
So I will teach.
Right.
Because if you don't know, and I'm going to say it again, if you don't know, then you don't know.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And especially now, since I'm a mother and I have a son, you know I'm about to go in.
Mm-hmm.
You already know what it's going for Cam.
Mm-hmm.
Like we gonna learn all social skills of life. We gonna learn all aspects, all emotions, how to deal with things, how to be expressive, how to communicate. It's going down.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's only preparation for him.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's definitely one role as parents in the way that we raise kids, thinking about, you know, what, like you as a woman, what are qualities that I look for in a man, you know, one who can be compassionate, who can express emotion, who is kind, who's caring, who can communicate. Well, that's who I want to raise my son to be.
Mm-hmm.
And dads with women, you know, and I feel like, you know, what are things that, or even as man, what kind of man do I want to be? Because what kind of man do I want my daughter to end up with?
Okay. If I were a boy. Oh, yo, I did a great job that time.
I can tell you worked on that. It was fantastic. So I think that's where it starts, is within yourself.
Oh yeah.
Right? And I feel like we
anything.
can't be part of a giant movement or a spokesperson for it. It starts within us.
Yes.
So, you know, reading books, listening to other people, looking at things with a critical lens, which I do now. Like, you know, the conversation we had about the kids' toys.
Yes,
now,
you did.
You'd never considered that, but now it's like, oh, wow, that's something I bet you'll be more aware of.
Yep.
When you go to the kids' section.
Yep. Exactly.
You know, the pink and purple toys are for the girls, and the blue and greens are for the boys. Like, those are the types of things I feel like we have to be aware of in order to combat it as a problem.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, I have to be consciously aware, okay, well, maybe I get my son a baby doll because I want him to be nurturing and kind and affectionate.
Yep.
But then I also get him the building toys because I want him to build.
Exactly.
Or as little girls, maybe we let them go get muddy outside and wrestle in the front lawn.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Those are... So I feel like that's one thing, is being aware.
Yes.
Right? So, and growing within ourselves. And then I feel like the next step is taking it to conversations with other people.
Yes.
You know, like I kind of did to you today when you're like, that wasn't ladylike. And I was like, but why do you say that?
Yep.
What is ladylike even?
Exactly.
Who decides what's ladylike?
What was wrong with me burping?
Nothing. It's a natural bodily function.
Exactly.
It's air caught in your, I don't even know. Air bubbles caught somewhere that had to get out. I don't know how exactly it works, but exactly. Why is that ladylike, you know? So I feel like that's the next step to it, is once we've kind of learned some for ourselves, is extending that to other people. And going back to friendships, the relationships that we have with other people make that more welcoming. You know what I mean? Because of our friendship, because I love you, I was able to say that to you.
Yep.
Lejante. She's probably like, you and your feminist crap always got something to say. Everything's a fight.
No, I love it.
But really,
it's the truth.
Who decides what's ladylike?
Yep, who decides? Where's the culture?
And there's no man-like. I've never heard that as a term.
Exactly.
Ladylike. All these rules that we have to follow as women.
Exactly.
Keeping ourselves clean and stuff. So I think that's the next step. Conversations with other people.
Yes. And children, because they're never too young to learn.
So that's another opportunity that we have as educators and educators of young children.
Yes.
Is instilling it in them now. And I will say, that is one thing that I adore about being a primary teacher. Is the older these kids get, sometimes they're already taught a certain way, and it can be, we know it is easier to teach something the right way from the start than it is to try to help somebody unlearn something they've already been taught. And so that's one thing I love about teaching young kids, is we really have the opportunity to mold their minds from a young age. Like, y'all are throwing the ball at recess. Let the little girls throw the ball with you.
Exactly.
Or, you know, commending a little boy for being courageous and expressing their emotion.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for being brave enough to tell us how you feel.
Yep.
but I think that's a lot of what I love about our job and the impact that we can make as it relates to gender stereotypes even.
And complimenting, encouraging, motivating. Just like how we were talking about women being competitive. You know, you see a woman doing her thing, tell her, great job. I like your shirt. You look nice today. I mean, come on. It's not going to hurt you to say kind words.
And even to take it a step further, as women, why are we always, here we go, complimenting on our appearance? You know what I mean?
Okay, so what do you suggest?
Like, I love how hard you worked on that. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Or I appreciate how brave you were when you read to the class.
Okay.
You know?
Now I have to question you. So do you think it will sound different coming from a woman versus a man?
What do you mean?
So do you
like
think,
compliments?
Yes. Based on the examples that you just mentioned. Because in my opinion, it will sound differently. Like, think about it. Like, think about a woman saying it versus a man. Like, which one will make you feel better?
I don't know if necessarily one would more than the other. I think just in general.
Really?
Truly. I really don't. There's a quote from Christina Yang from Grey's Anatomy, and I can't directly quote it, but she basically says, like, if you really want to please me, compliment my brain. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Don't compliment the way I look, what I'm wearing. If you really want to catch my attention, like, I'm brilliant. Compliment my brain.
Okay.
But so often it's appearance.
Yeah. Yeah. You think it's because it's just easier and it's convenient?
Kind of.
Yeah, I would say so too.
It's very surface level.
Yeah.
You don't have to know somebody to give them a compliment about their. But then that goes to connections.
Yeah.
You know, we should teach kids from a young age to connect to each other, so that you can have those conversations. But yeah, I think it's just all like being aware of it. Kind of one last funny story. I don't know. We'll see where it goes. When I was student teaching, I had an awesome coaching teacher. He taught second grade, and I student taught under him. And he played this game at recess with his kids called O-Ball, and it was basically like a form of dodgeball, basically. And it was one of my first days out there, and we went out to recess, and you know, he was like, "Oh, Miss Taylor, if you want to play, you can play with us." And he was like, "Well, I didn't even really expect you to play with us." And they played with these really spongy balls. So, I mean, you could peg these kids, and they're perfectly fine. So we were playing O-Ball, and he was like, "You were wearing this dress and these, like, wedge shoes." And he was like, "I was just totally baffled when you pick up that ball and started beaming kids because I didn't expect it." But it was so, like, refreshing to hear that from him, to acknowledge I made a judgment on you.
Yes.
That was based on maybe your gender, your appearance, what you were wearing, and I assumed that you wouldn't want to play, and maybe you weren't even athletic. But he acknowledged that openly.
That's what I'm talking about. See, you accepted it differently. Now, what if it was a woman? How do you think it would have made you feel? The same? I don't think the same.
I truly believe the same.
Really? Okay.
Because my attitude is, if anyone is willing to be brave enough and authentic enough and transparent enough to say to you, I passed this judgment on you.
Yeah, that's
for whatever
true.
reason.
Yep.
And I was wrong. I can respect that so much, no matter who it's coming from. And I feel like that's so authentic, and that's what we need to do more of.
Yeah.
Hey, I made this judgment about you from the beginning. I thought you were cocky and arrogant, but really, you're good at what you do. You know, and I think those are the types of things that we have to put out in the open so that we can conquer those.
Yes.
Those stereotypes that we have about people.
Yes.
You know? Like, to say to a guy, you know, you were getting really emotional, and at first that was off-putting to me. And I acknowledge that that's because I had an expectation of you, and I really appreciate that you were transparent with me.
Yeah.
Like, those are the things that we have to openly talk about in order to move forward from it.
You're
to
right.
acknowledge in the open, this is what I thought of, this is where my mind went to, and I had to retrain my brain to think differently about the situation.
Yes. Yes. I agree.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it really is. Cause it's not often that I speak on this topic, but like tonight you opened me up, girl. Cause I was like, Lord, I don't know if I'm gonna do a lot of talking with this one, but it's truth to it. We can't hide from it. It's what we're dealing with.
And I think we have to want better for our younger generations, and that means that we have to do better with it. For our little boys to feel safe expressing emotion.
Oh, yeah.
For our little girls to not call them bossy, to commend them in their leadership.
Yep.
We think about some of the terms that we use to describe girls and boys, and it's like we attach these connotations to attributes in females that are actually, we consider good things in men.
Correct.
Oh, he's such a good leader. He commands respect. A little girl tries to do that and she's bossy. So that's where I think we have to really examine things critically in order to make it better in our immediate circle. Starting with us, starting with the things around us that we can have an impact on. With anything, but specifically this week, talking about gender roles and gender stereotypes.
Because being expressive, man, that's very important.
For everyone.
Yeah. For everyone.
Well, good stuff.
Yes.
I think we found a good stopping place. This was a really good conversation. I enjoyed this one.
Yes.
So we encourage you guys, kind of, we gave some questions, some breakaways last time with our Friendship TED Talk, but TED Talk, LOL, our podcast, our Speak podcast, where we were talking about, like, what do you look for in a friend and what qualities of that do you have? So I want to challenge you guys to think about things through a critical lens, moving into this week as it relates to gender roles. So, examine the toys your kids are playing with, the conversations you're having with kids, the TV shows you watch.
Yes.
Like, are the women always the ones in the kitchen cooking on the TV shows? Examine those things critically because we have to be aware of them in order to promote positive change. And that last little bit, I saw a little thing, Meghan Markle, when she was young, she saw some commercial for a show on Nickelodeon, and it was for a dish soap commercial. And it was talking about so women can get the dishes clean. And she wrote a letter, and Jonte just cocked her head at me.
Yeah.
Exactly. But some people probably didn't even bat an eye at it. They're just like, oh, yep, women clean the dishes so they can get them clean. But she wrote a letter, and she said, cleaning the dishes is not a woman's job.
Okay.
It is all of our jobs.
Oh, okay.
And so she was like, I would really appreciate if you changed the wording in the commercial. And they did. They changed it to people. But those are the types of things we have to be aware of and on the lookout for so that we can have conversations too. And with our kids. Could you imagine Cam's old enough, he sees that commercial and you're like, pause, we're going to have a conversation about this.
Exactly.
Cam, did you just hear what they said? What's up with that, Cam? And Cam, I know Cam, the way he's going to be, he's going to say, Mama, I'm big mad. I do the dishes too around this house. Yep. I need good dish soap to get the dishes clean.
Yep.
So, look at things through a critical lens. Have conversations with people. If you're looking for a good read Untamed by Glennon Doyle. It is such a good book. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for tuning in with us. We hope you gave us a good listen. Like we said, if you missed our first episode about friendship, please backtrack and listen to it. We kind of talk about us as friends and then friendship as a bigger picture. But thanks for tuning in. We hope to see you next time.
If I were a boy